Welcome back. It's good to be with you in some form or other now. Um, as you can see, I'm back at school, and we're going to get right back into where we left off before my untimely forced quarantine by the county health department. So let's take a look at Schoology and kind of see what we have in store for this week. Okay. So today's January 4th, so you're going to have your journal entry to do, and then I'm going to do some notes with you. Tomorrow, you'll have a journal and one of your activities. Wednesday, we'll do some notes. Thursday, an activity, and then Friday, journal and it's called a turn back time activity. Okay, so this is your schedule for the week. It's nothing really too different. We're still in our routine that we've had since September. So, but always, if you have questions, you can always contact me through call the school. I'll do a face-to-face Teams meeting with you if you need anything I can do to help you along. I'm here for you. Okay, so without further ado, we'll go ahead and take a look at today's notes. Okay, so when last I left you, we were talking about Rome and how we talked about the geography of Rome. We talked about its early government. We talked about the types of citizens, the plebeians, patricians, about how they had a republic using the 12 tables. They had a senate and tribunes. And the way in which they maintained their power in Mediterranean was through the use of their military, and how they acquired that power was by defeating the Carthage in the Punic Wars. Okay? Well, today we're going to talk about how that republic falls apart and the Roman Empire is born. Okay? So Rome was in a period of huge growth. And we're talking not just geographically, we're talking economically. And this economic growth created a very large gap between rich people and poor people. Rich people would live on these huge estates called villas, and they would have lots and lots of slaves. In fact, by about the year 100 BC, 1 out of 3 people living in Rome were slaves. So a very significant portion of their population were in bondage. And so that the people, you can imagine, you yourself probably would not be too excited to be a slave. So I want you to imagine a third of the population of the largest city on earth at the time being enslaved, and so it creates a pretty volatile situation. And when eventually the republic, where the Senate and the tribunes, the people elect these people to represent them, eventually it falls apart when 3 men form what is known as a triumvirate. Okay? A triumvirate is simply a Latin word for meaning like 3 rulers, okay? 3 leaders. These 3 men were Pompey, Crassus, and Julius Caesar. Okay, now they have longer names, like Pompey's like Gnaeus, Pompeius Maximus, and then Crassus is Marcus Licinius Crassus, and Caesar's Gaius Julius Caesar. So Caesar actually means like ruler or leader. But anyway, these 3 men take control of Rome over, basically saying we are going to rule as a triumvirate without having, really any input from the people. The Senate is not needed much, and they took 3 different areas of the empire. Pompey was given Spain to rule and oversee the grain supply. So that was his job as present-day Spain, to maintain the grain supply, make sure the people of Rome were well fed. Crassus was given Syria. Syria is part of like where the Middle East, Lebanon, present-day Syria, Persia, and that was his job. Unfortunately, while Crassus was ruling in Syria, he was killed by a group of people living there called Parthians, as they were not too excited to live under Roman authority. And after, Marcus Licinius Crassus may have been the most wealthy person to ever live. He had extreme wealth. Had the largest home in Rome. He had thousands of slaves. Very, very wealthy person. And the day after the Parthians had killed Crassus, they melted down all of his gold that he had on him and poured it down his throat to quench his thirst for wealth. So pretty rough go of it. Fortunately, Crassus had already perished. For him anyway. But he was pretty harsh to the Parthians, as evidenced by their reaction to his presence. And so obviously the triumvirate's not working when one of the three members is dead. And the third member, as we mentioned, was Julius Caesar. And Julius Caesar was a military commander, and he was given the area of Gaul. Now you can see on our map here, obviously we have Italy here, right? Rome is located roughly here. This is Gaul, okay? So it's not geographically very far from Rome itself. It's present-day France, okay? Most of it is present-day France. So, and that's what he was given. Okay, now, so obviously Marcus Licinius Crassus is dead, and now all that's left is Pompey and Caesar. Well, Pompey and Caesar try to both take claim of Rome to rule on their own. And the way Caesar decides to do it is he's going to invade Rome with the military and proclaim himself to be the very first Roman emperor. And he's successful in doing so. He crosses the Rubicon River with the Roman army at his disposal, enters the city of Rome, and says, I'm now the emperor. I'm first emperor. And he becomes a tyrant, bringing forth an end to the Roman Republic. Well, as you may imagine, he's going to upset a lot of very powerful people in the Senate, some of the most powerful people in Rome. And they go from being extremely powerful to, Caesar's in charge, I'm going to do whatever I want. And I appreciate, that's what Caesar's kind of like. I appreciate you senators, but we're going to do what I say. And so he strips the power from all these senators, and that's going to make them very unhappy. So one thing that history shows us is that very powerful people do not like to have their power taken from them, and so they plot against the emperor, Julius Caesar, and assassinate him. They assassinate him. They basically murder him in the floor of the Senate by stabbing him to death. The records show he was stabbed about 23 times on March the 15th in 44 BC, which is now referred to as the Ides of March, the middle of March. So if you ever heard anyone, the expression say, beware of the Ides of March, it's in reference to Julius Caesar because it means that you're going to be betrayed. Because one of these senators in the portrait on the right is actually Julius Caesar's best friend, Brutus, who was one of the senators who plotted against him and betrayed him. So we get a lot of, Julius, we could talk for an entire semester about Julius Caesar. But just to talk a little bit about the legacy that he leaves behind. Many of you may have been brought into the world this way with a C-section or Caesarean section, if you've ever heard of that. It's where the child is removed from the mother's womb while she's still awake, and for health reasons or whatever. The myth, which is what it is, a myth is that Julius Caesar was the first ever child born this way, and that's not true. That's not true at all. We did not have the medical expertise to remove a child from the womb of a mother without killing the mother. So, but what did happen in Caesar's day was that they were pagans, and part of their religious requirement is that if a woman died while she was pregnant, she was not to be buried with the child still inside her. So they would remove the child from her womb. And that was a religious requirement. So mothers were not to be buried pregnant. So it evolved over a long, long time as a way of saving babies or making sure the pregnancies can be delivered safely. Um, so it had really nothing. The myth was that was Caesar. So, but it was actually a religious thing that the Roman pagans had. I'm sure you've heard of Little Caesars. It's kind of a stretch, but it's part of his legacy. Caesar salad. The Kaiser Wilhelm, the Germans for a while, they overthrew republic themselves, and they referred to themselves as Kaisers, which is kind of a German take on the word Caesar. So if you ever heard of a Kaiser roll or Kaiser bun, or it's really an homage to Julius Caesar. Crossing the Rubicon. This means that once you've done that, you've gone too far. There's no turning back. So if you ever heard somebody say to you, "We haven't crossed the Rubicon yet," that means there's still time to turn back. Okay. So needless to say, after the death of Julius Caesar, it's a pretty volatile period of time in Roman history. A civil war breaks out between several groups of people, mainly the senators and the supporters of Julius Caesar. And once the Civil War eventually dies down and many of the senators are either exiled or killed outright, and a new group called the Second Triumvirate formed. I guess because the first one worked so well. But the Second Triumvirate was made up of also three men. Octavian, or Octavius. He was Julius Caesar's grandnephew and adopted son, so they were related. Lepidus, he was the commander of Julius Caesar's cavalry, so he was a guy who commanded horse battalions. And Mark Antony. Antony was Julius Caesar's friend and ally, and really kind of like his assistant. All right. So once again, these three men, the empire is divided up, and each of them go their own separate ways to rule. But they really know that they all are out for their own self-interest, as they want to be like Julius Caesar and rule as an independent, singular person, like a tyrant. So Octavian, he gathers as much military might as he can. He goes off to invade little fringe areas of the empire, and he brings like the media with him. Now, at that time, the media was like a guy that would ride back to Rome on horseback and announce the news. But he would bring these. He would go to the fringes of the empire, these small villages and even some larger cities, and be like, "Look, you're gonna owe taxes to Rome, or I'm gonna destroy you, and make all your people slaves." So people had the choice to pay tribute to Octavian and Rome, or face annihilation. And so most of the people were like, "Well, we'll just pay." Okay, and so he announces back, he has all of his media people, his scribes. When they return to Rome, they announce information of Octavian being this great conqueror and expanding Rome for the glory and power of Rome. And, he's really not really having to fight much. It's kind of brilliant. Lepidus and Antony, they kind of sided with each other, and they want to try to begin a war against Octavian. So in doing so, Mark Antony, he allies himself with the part of the Roman Empire called Egypt, and he goes to Egypt, and he falls in love, and when he meets the Egyptian pharaoh at that time, Cleopatra. He lives in Egypt for quite some time. Lepidus, he eventually, since he sided with Antony, Octavian finds out about that, and he forces him into exile to a part of Italy called Circe. So, but anyway, Antony and Cleopatra are living in Egypt. Octavian, he's upset that Antony's not ruling his part of the empire the way he should, and not paying him what the honor and tribute that he believes he deserves. So Octavius goes to Egypt to seek out Mark Antony and give him an ultimatum. You will return with me to Rome an answer for your crimes against Rome, with which there weren't really any crimes other than living in Egypt and falling in love with an Egyptian woman and not a Roman woman. But Antony and Cleopatra knew that things would not go well for them. They would probably be crucified in public, literally crucified in public in the streets of Rome if they returned. And so they chose to commit suicide with themselves. Antony, he took his sword and killed himself, and Cleopatra allowed a poisonous snake, probably an asp, to bite her. So, needless to say, the second triumvirate falls apart. Lepidus in exile, Antony dead. Now all that's left is Octavian, and Octavian becomes Octavian Augustus. Augustus means revered one, and it begins what's known as the Age of Augustus, and it's a good period of time. It's a time of peace. We remember a lot of these guys. Augustus. That's where we get the month of October from. August. Julius Caesar. We get the month of July. Julius. So because we have a Roman calendar, and this age of Augustus extends way past the reign of Octavian, and for about 207 years, Rome lived in a relatively peaceful and prosperous era. Things were really good for Rome, and there's a series of emperors that comes after Octavian that continues this peace and prosperity. And this era of Roman peace is referred to as Pax Romana, which is Latin for Roman peace, because Latin is the language that they spoke in ancient Rome. Okay, so I know I went kind of quick, but that's one of the beauty parts of recording it, is you can pause it as you need as you're taking your notes. But if you have any questions or if you need any help, don't hesitate to contact me. So you just take your notes today and complete your journal entry, and tomorrow you'll do an activity on this information using the information from Module 6.2 in your text. So let me know if you need anything, and I'm here for you. Have a great day.